Hello everyone and welcome back. I don't know about everybody else, but it's been really hard to motivate myself to too much of anything that isn't Legends Arceus recently, since the launch a couple weeks back. In the last video I mentioned that I joined the Littleroot Draft League using the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl VGC format. So while I'm definitely excited to show off some Series 12 content soon, this video we're going to go over my draft and the first two matches of the season. We get to see some really cool Draft League tech that I'd like to show off. We can start though with my draft though. The team is the Atlanta Ampharos. I actually managed to get my mascot Mon in there. I definitely made the mistake of going a little top heavy in my draft, but I think we still ended up with a pretty solid squad. Obviously the main core here is the Rain core of Scissor, Politoed, and Ludicolo. These three are pretty dominant even in the normal non-draft BDSP format, so they do extremely well here with generally weaker teams with the powerful Rain synergy that they bring to the table. The unfortunate part is that they're very predictable, but they're also strong enough together that that isn't necessarily a problem. So for the rest of the squad, we have the option to go both fast and slow. Claydol is a great budget Trick Room setter, really good bulk. It likes to lead next to Ludicolo for fake out support. It has the option to set up for damage with Nasty Plot and Calm Mind, or support with screens after that point. That Trick Room then enables Ampharos, Flareon, Exploud, or Scissor to sweep with their sizable offensive stats and low speed. And even Ludicolo and Politoed operate pretty well under Trick Room if they're not there together, so Swift Swim isn't active. Flareon has base 130 attack and Guts to do insane damage, although you do have to run a Toxic Orb. Ampharos takes advantage of Rain and can use its pretty high special attack with Thunder. And Exploud can just spam Stab, Specs, Hyper Voice, which, enough said, right? That's a lot of damage. And then on the other side of the fence, we have a fast mode outside of Ludicolo Swift Swim. Specifically, it's this duo here of Swellow and Dugtrio. Both of them are extremely fast for the format with base 125 and base 120 respectively. Dugtrio traps opponents with Arena Trap and spams Earthquake next to Swellow, who's immune. And Swellow can take out those trap threats with Stab, Guts, Facade. There's also some really fun tech here, like Screech on Dugtrio to double our physical damage. And if the opposing team is slow enough, you can even make Dugtrio a point faster than Swellow to set up some really crazy Okos there. Now this team does lack a few major tools, most notably Intimidate and Tailwind. Still, we do have fantastic type synergy and a number of cool tactics, so while I could potentially trade Ludicolo for a weaker Swift Swimmer so I can fill one of those roles in my dead Swailot slot, honestly Swailot doesn't really do a whole lot for me here, I just think Ludicolo is too invaluable. Like, its typing, fake out, and speed is amazing. I think we're going to go at least 2 more weeks, rounds I guess, before I seriously consider a big shakeup on the team. But yeah, let's take a look at my first opponent's draft. Week 1 was against Esquire, a fellow Georgia VGC player who's actually my teammate in the USPA League. He's got a very interesting draft that seems to run quite fast, so I figured that Trick Room would be the best way to go for me. I'm also extremely wary of their Illumise because I know it gets Prankster Sunny Day, so my Rain team is going to have some problems there since they can just immediately cancel my weather. This is especially scary with Typhlosion there, potentially firing off fast eruptions in Sun, so I know I need to build around that. Let's take a look at my team spreads now to see how I go about that. So taking a look at the spreads here, we can see that Ludicolo has its HP optimized for Life Orb. It has a high modest special attack breakpoint. This bulk gives it a 93% chance to live a max attack Adamant Poison Jab from my opponent's Skuntank. And it always lives max special attack Modest Eruption in Sun from Typhlosion. Claydol has a Mental Herb to guarantee Trick Room without having to fake out Illumise, who could definitely taunt us otherwise. It's better to be able to fake out the damage threat. It has a low Quiet special attack breakpoint to kill Typhlosion with +1 Earth Power after a Calm Mind boost. It lives a max attack Adamant Gyarados Waterfall, a max special attack Modest Blossom Solar Beam. It has an 88% chance to live a Life Orb, max special attack Modest Eruption in Sun from Typhlosion, and there are 4 wasted EVs here, which isn't amazing, but that happens on Trick Room mons when you go for a specific calc sometimes, so I figure it's an okay trade-off. Ampharos, high modest breakpoint. It easily lives a +1 max attack EQ and a +2 max attack Waterfall from Gyarados. Always lives a max special attack Eruption in Sun from Typhlosion, and easily lives a max attack EQ from Donphan. Politoed, just a very generic defensive spread with HP divisible by 4 to optimize for Citrus and otherwise just hitting the breakpoint for its defensive stat. It is sassy because we're trying to run Trick Room here. Exploud, just a very basic max HP, max special attack spread, as none of our attacks are guaranteed Okos, so we just want to maximize our rolls. specs with electric and fire coverage in case Hyper Voice just isn't enough to pick up a KO in a particular scenario, but ideally we're just spamming that Hyper Voice in Trick Room. And then Scissor, absolutely generic main format spread. We don't really want to bring it against a Sun plus Eruption team, but it is there because it does match up okay into some of the other mons. There's no real calcs for it, so I went with my tried and true. Basically, Rain is a bluff here, and I wanted to use Trick Room so that Claydol, Ampharos, and Exploud can take out the big threats of Typhlosion, Gyarados, and Pachirisu. Unfortunately, that's all theory, and as I was about to find out in this match, theory is very different from practice. Let's take a look. Seeing the Typhlosion Illumise duo I was scared of in Team Preview, I decided to stick with my Ludicolo Claydol lead as a plan to go for a guaranteed Trick Room with Fake Out. Ampharos and Exploud then came in the back to try to abuse that Trick Room, although Ludi can also be there since we're not bringing Politoed for Rain. Esquire led with Blossom and Illumise. My Claydol has Mental Herb, so Blossom posed a much bigger threat to my Trick Room with Sleep Powder. I chose to fake out the Blossom and managed to set Trick Room, but Esquire had Struggle Bug on their Illumise, and I realized far too late how much trouble I was in since I had brought 4 special attackers to this game. From this point, things only got worse as Struggle Bug neutered my offensive output, and Esquire's Fake Tears Giga Drain combo completely melted my attackers while undoing any damage I did manage to deal. The KO on Claydol did allow me a free switch into my Exploud without taking a Struggle Bug, so my hopes remained. Unfortunately, I chose the wrong target for my Specs Flamethrower and Illumise, basically wasting the full power attack into their Focus Sash. This allowed them to get both Sleep Powder and Struggle Bug off, which basically sealed the game. This might have looked a lot different had I targeted Blossom. I did get a nice one-turn wake later, but the Struggle Bug drops made it ultimately pointless as Exploud failed to pick up a KO on Blossom, and my Trick Room expired. My forfeit for Game 1 came shortly after this. For Game 2, I decided to make the gamble that my opponent would bring the same lead since it worked out for them, so I led with the 2 mons that would threaten Blossom and Illumise the most in Scissor and Exploud. Poly and Ludi would come in the back. I was basically abandoning my main Trick Room strategy, and that would come back to bite me. That's right, because my opponent went with exactly the strategy I was scared of for Game 1. I decided to trust my calcs and hope that Exploud would take the hit from a Sunny Day Eruption combo while Scissor protected. Unfortunately, I later learned that Esquire's Typhlosion was armed with Choice Specs, so most of my calcs around Eruption were useless. Fake Out from Ludi would allow me to stay in the game to some degree, getting Illumise within bullet punch range. My hope was that my opponent would want to switch out Illumise to avoid the KO while I swapped Politoed in to regain weather control. Sadly, Esquire didn't take the bait, and Politoed was trapped in the sun, where even its substantial bulk and type advantage couldn't save it from considerable eruption damage. Here, a smart switch from Esquire into their Blossom basically sealed Game 2 and the set, as I simultaneously missed a KO, lost my Scissor, and only chipped Typhlosion with a Scald in the sun. I had nothing to stop the eruptions and called it quits at this turn. Good game to Esquire. I think I really need to stick to my Trick Room game plan, but maybe with Scissor in the back over Ampharos to have something that can ignore Struggle Bug. Still, they're an awesome player with some really cool draft tech, so there's no shame in losing here. Week 1 was an L, but let's see how Week 2 went. So in the second round, we were up against Jigs, one of the Littleroot Lessons moderators. Their draft has some really scary monsters in it, like Zoomerl and Butterfree, Sleep Powder, Rage Powder plus Belly Drum, and they're also just primed for Trick Room with Hypno, Aggron, and Magmortar on this team. Because of this, I decided that my best bet is to go just as hyper-offensive as possible and shut them down before they can set up that Trick Room, but to still bring a couple of slow options in case I can't stop it from going up. Let's take a look at the spreads that I did for this. So I said I was going hyper-offensive, and to me that means that cool Swellow Dugtrio combo I was talking about in the intro to the video. The EV spreads look very fancy, but they're really just to outspeed the fastest thing my opponent has, which was Frostlass. Dugtrio is actually 1 point faster than Swellow, despite having a lower base speed, and that's to allow us to use that Screech tech there, so that the big physical guts boosted attacks can do double damage, which, if we can pull that off, will be absolutely huge. It'll also set up bigger damage for itself and Scissor, so I'm feeling pretty good about that tech there. Ludi and Scissor are running the same spreads from last week, with Poly also just being generically bulky, but it runs a neutral speed tier rather than minimum. Finally, we have Exploud to just dish out damage in Trick Room as the next slowest option after Scissor, just in case my opponent ends up setting that, because it does seem like something they're going for. Let's take a look at the matches. My opponent's team is more or less what I expected. I stick with my game plan of leading with Swellow and Dugtrio, and then throw the Rain Duo in the back. Ludicolo seems necessary for their Azumarill, but Politoed is more of a safety pick, and we could maybe change it in Game 2 if it doesn't work out for us. Into my opponent's Hitmonlee Lopunny lead, I decided to go with a double Protect, because both of my opponent's Pokemon have the potential for Fake Out, and since they're trapped in with Dugtrio's ability, I don't really see much downside in going for it. Jigs went with a really cool tech of Teeter Dance, which didn't confuse my Pokemon thanks to the Protects, but it did proc their Hitmonlee's Unburden ability by consuming its Person Berry, which also saves it from the confusion. Unfortunately, I forgot about that Unburden ability from Hitmonlee that doubled its speed, and I went for a normal attack with Swellow instead of at least getting off a Gut Stab Quick Attack. The high jump kick Okotos, which was a huge misplay on my end. I do manage to do some big damage with Earthquake, but then their Lopunny used another piece of very cool tech with Klutz Switcheroo to stick me with a Choice Band that wasn't affecting it. I brought in Ludicolo into the free switch-in slot, and then swapped Politoed in to let me kill with Swift Swim. My opponent double protected, and probably out of fear of Fake Out, so we just delay our plans till the next turn. Sadly, I got a bit too greedy with Ludicolo's bulk, so despite having greater base speed, we took another big high jump kick before taking out Hitmonlee. Lopunny uses Teeter Dance to confuse both my Mons, which is pretty scary, but luckily Politoed breaks through confusion to bring it down to the red. In retrospect, I really should have reversed my targets. With Hypno coming into the Hitmonlee slot, I realized that there was no way for me to stop Trick Room, and instead decided to swap away Ludicolo's confusion while attempting to chip Lopunny with Politoed. We get a bit of good fortune here, as Lopunny returns Dugtrio's Focus Sash to it, but Politoed hurts itself in confusion as Hypno sets up Trick Room. At this point, I don't actually want to KO Lopunny, because I can try stalling away my opponent's Trick Room turns while denying them a switch into their Abuser due to Arena Trap. Dugtrio protects to preserve its Sash, and Politoed manages to chip away at Hypno. Switcheroo leaves my poor Politoed equipped with a useless Choice Band, so it's all Scalds from here on out. This turn I decided to go for double attacks to get my opponent into a 3v1 scenario. Hypno sets Reflect, which is rough for Dugtrio, but we at least get to keep our Sash intact. Politoed snaps out of confusion just in time for a new teeter dance to be set, but both my Pokemon manage to attack anyway. Hypno does survive, but we're firmly in the lead now. My opponent's final Pokemon is a Azumarill, and that's terrifying given the possibility of Belly Drum and Aqua Jet plus their Trick Room turns. Since we're close to the end of Trick Room, I decide to protect Dugtrio and try chipping down Hypno with Politoed so that we can abuse our Focus Sash in the endgame. Azumarill does indeed go for that Belly Drum, so that's scary, but our Protect is well called, and Politoed brings Hypno into range of another attack. This last turn I decide to double attack so as to sack something for Ludi to come in for fake out pressure. Azu tears through Politoed with a +6 play rough, but we get a bit of luck with a confusion hit on Hypno, allowing Dugtrio to keep its sash yet again, so an EQ brings us down to our 2v1 situation. After a dead round of Protect Fake Out, I managed to land a Screech on Azumarill as Ludicolo goes down to an Aqua Jet. This seals the game in my favor, as my Focus Sash allows Dugtrio to survive a +6 Aqua Jet and clutch the game with one more Earthquake. For Game 2, I decided to just lead with my tried and tested Rain duo. Ludicolo and Rain will have by far the fastest fake out on the field, which will allow Politoed to put pretty much anything into range of Ludi's attacks with a Rain-boosted Scald. I decided to bring Scissor in the back because Azumarill was so scary in Game 1, and finally rounded out with Swellow because despite Exploud being very tempting for my opponent's Trick Room, Guts boosted Quick Attack and Protect just felt like way better tools for stalling it out, and ultimately we are faster, so that should be our main priority in the match. My opponent adapts with an Azumarill Butterfree lead, and I decide to double into the Butterfree with Fake Out and Scald. I had hoped that my opponent would be too scared to go for Belly Drum on Azumarill due to the threat of Giga Drain, but I was decidedly wrong there, as my opponent immediately gets their +6 on turn 1. Since Ludi is immune to Rage Powder, I decided that attacking the Azumarill was too obvious, and that a different approach was in order. This paid off greatly for me as we called Azumarill's Protect, taking out the Butterfree before I could put anything to sleep, and then Politoed sets Perish Song to force their boosted Azumarill out in a few turns. With Hypno coming into the Butterfree slot, I know Trick Room is coming, and there's nothing I can really do to stop it. I swap Politoed into the Scissor to have some damage into Hypno and a good Trick Room attacker, then go for Giga Drain into the Azu slot since it just protected. I guess they didn't want their sweeper in the back to take that hit, so they allowed their perished Azu to go down as Trick Room went up. As my opponent's Aggron comes into their side slot, I know I'm winning in score but not in board position. Head Smash can OHKO pretty much anything on my whole team, and they have a full 4 turns of Trick Room to work with. I swap Ludi into Poly out of fear of that slot getting attacked, and my opponent capitalizes on this with a Curse as Hypno sets Reflect to turn my X-Scissor into a 3-hit KO. Next turn I do a round of double protects to stall out Trick Room, but there is still another 2 turns ahead of us. Things get even dicier the following turn as I make the wrong switch, allowing Politoed to go down to a crit with no response from me as I attempt to sack my Swellow instead. Luckily there's only one more turn of Trick Room after this. My Flame Orb also procs, which is a big deal for when I regain speed control. I go for one more round of double protects to stall out the final Trick Room turn, and my opponent capitalizes on that with yet another Curse boost. Still, as we regain speed control, I can say we're back in a good board position to go along with our score lead. From here, I absolutely can't allow Trick Room to go up again, so I double into the Hypno. They have Reflect up, but Gut Stab, Facade, and super effective X-Scissor manage to finish the job before Aggron takes down Swallow. From here, Ludi and Scissor manage to clean up. I take the opportunity to fake out Sword Stand since my opponent has the opportunity to protect, and that works out nicely for me. Finally, +2 Bullet Punch and Scald combo to finish off the game, so we get our first dub of the season to put us at 1-1. Really good game to Jigs. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Weekly content is a bit much for me right now at this point in my life, so I'll likely be covering the rest of the season similarly to this. You can see my next match is up against KS Knight Rider, who is one of the undefeated people in the league right now, so going to be scary, but hopefully be part of the next video for this. The Series 12 ladder is also finally available, so I'll be showing off some fun teams on that front too. Until next time,